Welcome to everybody. I'm Joe Dowley, the president of the MG Car Club of Washington, D.C. Center. And we're very glad to have you here. We're going to get started. And just a reminder to everybody to mute yourselves so that the presentation is nice and crystal clear for everybody. And there'll be a chance for you to ask questions, certainly in a live mode and also on the chat forum part of Zoom. So we just ask everybody to mute if you could possibly do that. And we have a large crowd on hand, which is just great because, as you know, this is a benefit for the Capital Area Food Bank. That's the region around Washington, D.C., which is our club region. And so we're just delighted to have everybody here in support of the food bank. This is an evening of fun, but also benefit, and it serves the greater Washington, D.C. region, which is, like most areas of the country, has a large proportion of people who are food insecure. So we're very, very anxious to get the proceeds from this evening to the food bank, and you all are a part of that. As the food bank says, each dollar we donate will result in 2.5 meals for families in need. They really do a wonderful job of stretching the dollars for the needs of people in the area. And they're at full throttle right now serving meals, and this is why it's so important to do this right now with the pandemic reaching into its second year. So I'm so pleased to say that as of this moment, owing to your generosity, everybody on this call, and the special generosity of some of our members and Alexander Valley Vineyards, we have raised almost $7,000 as of this evening, and we're still counting. So as you can see on the slide here, we have some people to thank, and among them is Alexander Valley Vineyards. They are supporting this evening, obviously, with their wines, but they're donating 15% of their product sales for this event to the Capital Area Food Bank, which is just outstanding. And they're also going to donate 15% of their product sales from the wines using our MG21 code through the end of March of 2021. So that's going to allow us to extend the benefit of this evening throughout the month of March. And I think you'll be convinced once you've tasted some of these wines to go out and purchase them. They're outstanding. And we are so delighted that Penny Haas, our club member, our fellow club member who lives down in the Eastern Shore, has taken the reins on this and given us this opportunity to have this wine tasting event. So without any further ado, a great big thanks to everybody. And I'm going to turn it over to Penny. And here we go. Let's get on with the show.
Thanks, Joe. And thanks for everybody for coming out. You know, Cars and Coffee is always a great event, but cars and wine doesn't necessarily go together. So one bright side of a pandemic is that we can bring wine to an MG club. So we're delighted to do that. You know, Alexander Valley Vineyards is located in Northern California on a fairly historic spot of property that was settled back in the 1800s by Cyrus Alexander. It's a very bucolic valley. It's only about 20 miles long, about 5 miles wide. And today agriculture still rules the valley. This was a view back in the early 1900s. You know, the property was purchased by Harry and Maggie Wetzel. And actually Maggie has a Virginia connection. She was born and raised down in Tidewater, Virginia. They moved to California. Harry was an executive in the aerospace industry. I did somebody a flip slide, sorry. He was an executive in the aerospace industry. They settled on the property in 1962, and they went ahead and as a second family on that property, they restored the original Alexander home. They went ahead and started a very thriving agricultural lifestyle, which is continued today by their children and grandchildren. So today, the fourth generation of the family is living on the property and are very proud to put their name on the wines that are Alexander Valley Vineyards. And to keep this evening interesting, we decided that, it wasn't just enough to have wine, that obviously we had to have some great trivia. So I'm going to let John explain the trivia contest, and throughout the evening, we're going to be breaking up all of the fun with the glasses of wine with a little bit of MG trivia.
Hello, I'm John Puglisi. Hello, I'm John Puglisi. Can everybody hear me? Penny? Okay. And I'll be working with Mike Eaton tonight, and the two of us will be handling the trivia end of this presentation. And we have some really great prizes to present tonight. And I'm just going to run through briefly how we'll do the trivia. I'll go ahead and read the trivia question twice, very slowly. And then we're going to ask each participant to use the chat feature in Zoom to actually make their reply. And we're going to ask you to try to prepare your response in a minute, maybe a little bit more. Mike Eaton will be reviewing the answers, and he will let us know when we have a person who has given the correct answer. And Mike may be asking some additional information to make sure we know who that person is. The first correct answer, of course, will win. If there are no correct answers, I'll go ahead and provide you with the answer. And we'll say that was a difficult question, and then we'll move on to the next question. And of course, the decision of the judge is final in this case. And we do have 12 trivia prizes to award tonight. And if anyone has technical problems, Ken Stepka, who is our director of activities for the club, has offered to assist. And I'll give you Ken's phone number right now. His phone number is 703-867-8526. So that's for anyone who's having technical issues. Ken Stepka's number is 703-867-8526. And Ken will be happy to assist. Okay, without any further ado, I'll ask.
Hey, John, before you get
Yes.
started, you may want to remind people how to turn on their chat box.
Okay, Ken, you want to handle that part, Ken?
Well, if they open up the menu at the top of the screen, under the, depending on which way their device is situated, in that menu, they should see something called chat. If they tap on that, that'll open up a dialog box. If you're on something like a phone or an iPad, it may not be visible in the initial menu. You may have to tap on more. If you tap on more, you'll see a list of items, including chat. That's the one you want to leave on for the trivia.
Okay, thanks, Ken. The first trivia question for tonight is and this trivia question is for we have two MG emblem magnets that can be awarded during this trivia question. And the question is, what was the year and make of the vehicle that was judged best in show during the club's 2020 virtual show? I'll say it again. What was the year and make of the vehicle that was judged best in show during the club's 2020 virtual show? Go ahead and text your answer in the chat box to Mike Eaton. A little hint, this vehicle was a one-of-a-kind car. It was the only one ever made, and it's owned by one of our fellow club members, Bob Morris of Great Falls, Virginia. The vehicle was highlighted in an hour-long episode of Chasing Classic Cars, which is on the Speed Network, on November 24th, 2020. The show provided extensive detail on the car's history and went into a very, very comprehensive review of a painstaking ground-up restoration. And unfortunately, Bob has decided to sell that vehicle, and it will be in an Amelia Island auction this year. So if anyone's interested, it's yours to have for, I don't know what the sum is though. Mike, how are we doing?
No correct answers as of yet. We have a couple of answers. Blue.
Okay.
I'm assuming that was a joke. 1918, 1935 silver, and MGPB airline coupe. All right, we will take, I think our first correct answer definitely has the car right. And we have our second correct answer with the car right.
Okay.
All right.
So we have 2 prizes for this category. So
Yes.
the correct answer will not stick everybody with the year, but the correct answer was Godsall, Godsal, named after the designer himself. And the year was 1935.
All right.
Mike, who are the winners?
Our winners are Jennifer Gunta and Chris and Cheryl Kintner.
Great. Congratulations.
All right, let's see if we can get this going again. Some reason we're having a little technical difficulty now. Let's see. All right, we're back to the wine tasting. We just wanted to give you a little quick history about where we were. So for those of you that have been to California, ABV is at about 75 miles north of San Francisco, about an hour and a half drive. We're in northern Sonoma County, and it's a region that truly is defined by the Russian River. We have warm days, very cool nights, and that's really the impacts our wines. Let's see. I think I'm having an internet issue. There we go. One of the reasons that our wines are so acclaimed is because of the talent of our winemaker, Kevin Hall. Kevin joined Alexander Valley Vineyards in 1998, and it was a great pleasure for us when he was named the Sonoma Winemaker of the Year in 2018. More importantly, for this particular club meeting, I think Kevin's first car was an MG Midget. So not only is he one of the finest winemakers in Northern California, he's a guy after our own heart. And Kevin tinkering with an MG can easily explain why he is so handy around the winery when it comes to fixing anything on short notice. So it's my pleasure to introduce Alexander Valley Vineyards winemaker, Kevin Hall. And we have another quick trivia question.
Okay. This is the second trivia question, and this will be for 2 of the highly sought after MG Car Club hats, which are always in demand and always in season. The second question comes from our club newsletter, and it's a recent article. The question is, what does the term blighty refer to? What does the term blighty refer to? And blighty is spelled B-L-I-G-H-T-Y. And the person to thank for this question is one of our regular Spark newsletter contributors, Bob Vitricus. And he wrote an article about blighty for the February 2021 edition of the newsletter.
All right. We've got plenty of answers here. Deborah Neve, England. Lisa Boland, Great Britain. Ruth Arnold, an authority, England. Chris Lutz says fog. Mark Grappin says England. BJTHO says England, and Mike to everyone says Great Britain. So our first two correct answers were, whoa, I'm sorry, Isabel and Brian. So, well, no, Brian was London. So Isabel, I'm not sure who Isabel's last name is.
Isabel Matt.
All right, Isabel.
Okay,
And
okay. And so just a little bit of background, the actual term blighty originated in India in the 1800s when it referred to an English or British visitor. The term did gain popularity in World War I when it was used to affectionately refer to Britain, or more specifically England. So thanks everybody for participating in that question.
So we're going to turn over the meeting now to Kevin Hall, and he's going to talk about Chardonnay. So hopefully you all have some Chardonnay in your glass.
Okay.
Yeah, we thought we'd like to start off by saying thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you tonight.
We don't have to finish each
My
one.
name's Kevin Hall. I'm the winemaker for Alexander Valley Vineyards. As Penny told you, I've been here for almost 23 years now in this role. And we thought we'd start you off tonight with our estate Chardonnay. I believe you have the 2018 estate Chardonnay. And 2018 was a fabulous year for California Chardonnay. The thing I remember about that year was it was a very even and mild growing season. So we got the rain that we needed early on, and the weather cooperated for the rest of the time. So the fruit matured at a nice, slow, even pace. We didn't have a lot of heat waves that year, so nothing took off. We ended up with this really great tasting Chardonnay fruit. And the Chardonnay from Alexander Valley, it has a tropical flavor to it, little pineapple. You also get this really great apple and pear. And I like to make it in the style that doesn't cover up the fruit, that accentuates that. So this wine, I'm not sure if we have some slides to, Penny, there we go. So here's one of the slides that we always like to show. It gives you an indication of the influence that the fog has on our vineyards. We have the Russian River that cuts across the property, and it brings in this marine layer every day so that the fruit doesn't ripen too quickly. So that fog holds things back. So it eventually burns off around 11 o'clock in the morning, and then the sun will come through and you'll start to get that ripening happening. But you don't want grapes like Chardonnay to ripen too fast. You want it to be a nice, slow, gradual ripening process. And then after, we'll let that hang for quite a while, and then we'll start picking Chardonnay in September usually. And the way we like to pick Chardonnay is we do night harvest. So during the evening at night, the fruit remains nice and cool. So it's a great way to harvest a aromatic fruit like Chardonnay. You don't get that heat. Heat can be detrimental at this point. So we do a lot of night harvesting. We send in the machines. We also have hand pickers. So you can see this is a good example of the lighting systems that we've come up with so that you can still harvest fruit at night. But the Chardonnay is made in a style where it's 70% stainless steel ferment. So what that means is that percentage of that wine never sees any oak barrel whatsoever. I also do 30% of the wine goes into an oak barrel. And then I like to blend the two styles. So the barrel fermented in oak, you get this creaminess on the palate. Obviously you get some oak flavor, a little toastiness. And then you have the nice bright fruit flavors that you get from the stainless steel ferment. And then I blend the two together for the estate wine. How many people out there, I'm just curious, how many people actually have the wine in front of them? Nice.
One of the questions everybody had, Kevin, was what some of your favorite food pairings are with the Chardonnay.
Chardonnay, so for me, for my family, we always have this with salmon. It goes great with salmon. It cuts through. It goes great with. We get Dungeness crab out here. It's the house wine for Dungeness crab for us. Any type of seafood, it always does great. Roasted chicken does well. You know, it cuts through a lot. I like to keep the acidity at a little higher level so that it pairs better with food. And then you also get all that great fruit flavors.
And I think from our experience, one of the favorite cheese pairings that many of us like creamy cheeses because the acidity really balances out the creaminess in a Camembert or some of your softer cheeses. So hopefully
Absolutely.
you can have that.
So this is a great shot looking over some of our vineyards. You can see this is slightly after, well, we haven't actually started pruning that block up in front there.
And the beauty of ABV is that we have 720 acres on the home estate. So that gives us a real wide diversity in terms of the planting sites because the estate stretches from the Russian River on the western side. And actually we now have a block on the western side of the Russian River, all the way to the Mayacamas Mountains on the eastern side. So that's why you're able to see 4 different wines in front of you tonight. And of course, we're back to a quick trivia contest question.
Okay. This is for an exceptionally rare and of course highly sought after MG insulated bag. And I can assure you these work also. I have one myself. The third trivia question of the night is, what was the name of the English ale named after a multicolored parts vehicle that roamed through the MG Abingdon factory?
Boom, 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 boom. That one didn't take long. Let's see who got there first because I got inundated with about 6 of them.
Okay.
Ryan, what is your last name? And I don't know if anybody can see me if I've taken over, but this is the correct answer and several people got it right. Old Speckled Hen.
Okay, and thanks to one of our longtime members, Mike Hughes, for introducing us to this ale after our October 19, 2020 drive to the Capitol and photo opportunity in celebration of the 90th anniversary of the MG Car Club in England. Mike was kind enough to hand out a bottle to each participant of the drive to the Capitol. Cheers, Mike, and thanks again.
And we had one comment that said they thought Chardonnay makes all Zoom meetings go better. And I would say that's probably a pretty true comment. Certainly Old Speckled Hen doesn't hurt it either. So back to Kevin.
So to talk a little bit about the winery. So here on the property, Penny told you a little bit about the Wetzel family, the owners of the property. Sustainability is something that it's just a way of life here. Something that we take very serious here on not only in the vineyards but also in the winery. There's certain things that we've implemented around the business to help with that, because this is who we're leaving it to. We're doing this all for the next generation. There are 4 different generations of Wetzels on the property. You know, I lived here on the property for a while. I had a few of my children live here on the property. We just want to take care of this place. It's a very special area. This is a wonderful job to have and a wonderful business. So whatever we can do to sustain that, we're trying to do that. And some of that we've implemented. We have solar panels. This is a picture of the cover crop, for example, that we have planted in the vineyards. So We plant cover crop between the vines to attract beneficial insects. We'll eventually till that into the soil to act as a nutrient for the soil going forward. So anything we can do like that, that we can give back and help produce better grapes. There's a picture of the solar panels. The winery is covered. The roof is covered with solar panels, and we also put in a whole nother solar array up on the hillside. So very excited about that.
Well, I'm back.
Back with another trivia contest.
Okay, another trivia question. And again, a very rare and highly sought after fabric MG patch. We only have one of them, so it may be the only one in existence. The question is, what is the one visual feature that distinguishes the MGC from the MGB? What is the one visual feature that distinguishes the MGC from the MGB?
All right, well, they're pouring in. Unfortunately, a lot of people are saying the hatchback. No, that would distinguish the BGT between the B. So it is not the hatchback, but Mark Grappin was the first right, and he has the hump in the hood. But I would beg to differ with this question. There are two visual cues, although the other one is very minute. It's 15-inch wire wheels versus 14-inch wire wheels on the MGB, but we will go with the hump in the hood because that's the correct answer we were looking for.
And Mike, I thought it was the bulge in the bonnet.
The bulge in the bonnet, the hump in the hood. I think they're both alliterative.
Okay, all right. And Mike, you are entirely correct. The other feature, but it was not so easily distinguishable, were the chrome wire wheels that were larger than the MGB. Now, just a side note, the MGC did find royal favor as the first car that was driven by His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales. For BMC, it wasn't really a great success, and the model only lasted 2 years. Originally, it was conceived as a replacement by BMC for the Austin Healey 3000 because it had its 6-cylinder engine, but it turned out that the MGC was both heavier, and it only produced 125 horsepower from its 6-cylinder engine. So hence the short lifespan for the model. And just a shout out to Mark Hanna from our club, who has in the past come to many of our events, and he was the activity director at the time, and he is the proud owner of a right-hand drive MGC.
Was that the British model?
So I think right now we'd like to give you an opportunity to pour a little Sinzin into your glass. Sinzin, this is our Zinfandel. So the winery has made Sinzin since 1978. So it wasn't the first wine that we started to produce. That was Cabernet, but it's always been a great variety that's near and dear to us. It does fabulous in Alexander Valley. Sinzin I always love this picture. This is our vineyard manager's wife. And she also is our grape sampler. So when it's time for harvest, she'll go out daily and she'll take grape samples, bring them back to the lab. We'll analyze them and see how the fruit is maturing. We'll taste it. We check sugar level, we check acid level, and of course we check flavor. And we're looking for that perfect spot to determine when we're going to harvest the fruit. So if you look at these vines, the Zinfandel produces a very large cluster, very large berries, large clusters. Some of these things can be huge. And Zinfandel always has this unique ability that within the cluster, you can have a raisin, you can have a pink berry, you can have the perfect berry. So it's a difficult grape variety in a way to deal with, because the fruit in the individual cluster can be at all different maturity levels at the same time. So you're looking for like that bell curve where the majority of the flavors are there and what you're looking for. Now, I'm always looking for that great Zinfandel spice, black pepper, sometimes white pepper. Alexander Valley gives this wonderful plum, black cherry, but it's an earthy, spicy one. Zinfandel's great. This is after we harvest it. So we bring fruit in. Those are called valley bins. They hold about 2.5 tons each. We dump them into a hopper. The hopper has an auger in the bottom of it, and that carries the fruit to what's called a destemmer, where the fruit is removed, the berries are removed from the stem, as you would imagine by the name. And then from there, it's pumped to a tank where we inoculate with the yeast and the fermentation occurs. This is another way we do it. So these are macro bins. They'll hold about 1/2 ton of fruit. We like to use these for our smaller lots. So this is one of our happy interns. We always, before the pandemic, we would always have around 4 different interns from all over the world that would come in and work harvest for us. Fortunately, as you're aware, there was no traveling last year, so we had to get local help, and we're not the only winery in the region, so there was a severe labor shortage. So no smiling, happy interns from last year. This was quite a few years back, but what he's doing there is during the fermentation, carbon dioxide is released. That's a natural byproduct of fermentation. And when the carbon dioxide is released, it lifts the grape skins up and they form a cap. The grape skins are where all the flavor, all the color, all that is concentrated. So you want to get that pushed back down into the liquid. And so we use this device, and he basically plunges down the grape skins back into the liquid. And we do that a couple times a day. It's a good workout.
And we're back. Again, the holidays are over, but MGs are year round, and we hope that you certainly could use another ornament for your tree. That we really never have enough. So the next question is that in what year did the infamous BMC Leyland merger take place? In what year did the infamous BMC Leyland merger take place? And this merger is lamented by MG enthusiasts because it put a stop to further MG competition activities. Critics were also decried the 1970 MGB models that were produced under the new partnership because they had plastic instead of leather seats, row style wheels, and for some, a horrid grill. But the negative did not stop the car from selling better than ever. Annual production figures were never higher than in 1970.
Right, we have a winner. BJTHO. Who is BJTHO, please?
That is Bruce McMillan.
All right, Bruce, good job.
And the answer was 1968.
And John, just for the record, are these highly sought after as well?
Oh, absolutely. And very difficult to find this time of year.
And Kevin, as I was kind of scrolling through through the answers here, I saw in the chat that somebody also asked for pairings with the Zinfandel. So if you could cover that, I don't know.
Yeah, sure. So Zinfandel, very spicy, very full body, very aromatic wine. I always like, my favorite pairing is anything off the, anything on the barbecue. So barbecue ribs. This is a great hamburger wine. You can imagine anything goes really well with a spicy based tomato sauce. So it holds up to grilling like crazy. So.
From the winery standpoint, we think some of the classic pairings are things that you might not think of. Roast turkey, roasted poultry is perfect with Zinfandel. Anything, Italian based. But this is the perfect carry-out wine in terms of things you might order from the carry-out, pizza, pasta, burgers, like Kevin said. Zinfandel is as versatile as Pinot Noir, but it tends to hold up to the bigger food flavors that you'll find in those things on barbecue and those spicy, so that it doesn't get wiped out by big flavors. It's one of our favorite wines because you can have so many different foods that pair wonderfully with it. And I'm sure most of you took advantage of the cheese trays that are out there, and hopefully you're trying some different things, and hopefully some of those cheese trays are some cured meats, because cured meats are phenomenal with Sinzin and Zinfandel. So if you're a Pinot Noir lover, give Zinfandel a chance. You'll be surprised. It's got a lot of the same flavor profile without the tannin you're going to see in the next couple wines.
And this is a great visual that I was kind of alluding to earlier. You can see the Zinfandel cluster, how much bigger the berries are than, say, the Merlot berries. We have a good reference point there with the quarters. Understand the size of those berries. Zinfandel has these huge berries. You can even see in that cluster, there's a slightly different colored grape there near the bottom. And that's what I was talking about. This is not an extreme change, but there's a little pink unripe berry sitting right there in that cluster. The Merlot cluster, on the other hand, real small berries, concentrated flavor. You get great color extraction in a cluster like that. So Merlot is very widely planted on the property. Not only do we make 100% Merlot, which you're trying, you have a sample of that tonight, but we also use Merlot. We blend into our Cabernet and a couple of our other wines as well. Merlot, a lot of times people think of Merlot as a little softer style. Our Merlot, from where it's grown in the southern Alexander Valley, tends to be a little bigger and bolder. We always like to say this is more of a cab drinker's Merlot. It definitely has a tannin structure. Sometimes I even blend certain lots of Merlot into my cab to enhance the tannins, to kind of give it even a bigger structure than the cab would have. But our Merlot, like I said, tends to be a little bigger, bolder. Always has great fruit flavors, black cherry, cassis. There's sometimes a little spice, a little earthiness.
Spice out of it.
What did you say on the second thing?
Spice.
Kevin, one of the comments, and somehow I missed it when it came up, but there was a comment about the alcohol level in the Zinfandel being 14.9 and how much they like. I think it said, this is great. And you might want to comment on how the climate impacts the wines and the grapes that you grow.
Oh, absolutely. So Zinfandel, and Zinfandel in particular, it's a great indicator. It gives you a snapshot of how that growing season was. So if you remember, I was talking about the 2018, about how it was a nice mild growing season, nice cool temperatures throughout. 2017, what 2017 was, we finally got some rain at the beginning of the growing season. We're coming off a few years of drought. The growing season progressed, and then as we got closer to the time of harvest, we had quite a few heat waves. And what the heat waves do is they concentrate the fruit. They drive the sugar up, and they can concentrate the flavors. Now this can be a great thing because you can get some really wonderful wines out of that. Zinfandel can accumulate sugar very quick. So about a week before we harvest it, we had an intense heat wave, which shot the sugar up. More sugar equals more alcohol. So that wine ended up being a little riper than other years, but I thought that the fruit flavors and the tannins and the acidity made for a balanced wine. I don't think it shows a lot of heat, but it definitely had a little bit higher alcohol than other vintages.
And I think as a whole, all of the wines from the Alexander Valley show great balance in the acidity because the effect of the fog that we have rolling in on a daily basis, which impacts
Absolutely.
that balance. So hopefully everybody's enjoying the Zin and the Merlot.
So during harvest, not only do we bring in a lot of grapes, we bring in a lot of barrels. So at the winery, we have a little over 10,000 oak barrels. And these are all brand new oak that came in. Oak barrels, so we use both American oak and we use French oak. Right now, American oak will cost around $350 to $400 a barrel. French oak costs around $1,200 a barrel. Mm-hmm. French oak is a lot more expensive. We use it on quite a few of our grape varieties. Pinot Noir, the Chardonnay portion that's barrel fermented is in French oak, some Cabernet, some Merlot, Cab Franc and Petit Verdot, varieties like that. But other wines I found do really great in American oak, and those would be wines like the Zinfandel, Sinzin, sees only American oak. Some of the Cab blocks and also some of the Merlot blocks are just in American oak. You get different, definitely get different flavor profiles, different texture, depending on what vessel you age and ferment your wine in. So American oak definitely has different flavors than French oak.
What is he talking about? Yeah.
Now we're getting to the high value trivia prizes. So I'm going to have to throw out a very hard question. What was September 10th, 1979, a dark day in MG history known as? Again, what was September 10th, 1979, a dark day in MG history known as?
We're there. Mike is a winner. That was pretty quick.
Ooh,
Mike,
wasn't
I don't know Mike who, because I'm a Mike and I, am probably disqualified from playing as I have the answers in front of me. But Mike Hughes, perhaps? Mike who?
Yep, Mike Hughes.
All
Mike
right,
Hughes.
Mike.
Okay. Well, September 10th, 1979 was known as Black Monday. It's the day when British Leyland announced that the MG sports car would go out of production and the factory at Abingdon would close. The resulting storm of protest caused British Leyland's then chairman, Sir Michael Edwards, to note in his 1983 autobiography that you mess with famous marque names at your own peril. Congratulations, Mike.
Kevin,
So
all the new,
go ahead, Penny.
yeah, I was gonna say, Kevin talked about all the new barrels that we receive on an annual basis. Now I can talk about what we do with those barrels and where they are stored.
So you can see, so you got to put those 10,000 barrels somewhere. And we decided that instead of having a warehouse, what we would do is we would have an extensive cave system. So our caves actually hold about 8,000 barrels. The other 2,000 are actually in the winery itself, but here's a little snapshot of one of the cave tunnels. You can see all of our barrels are on these racks. Those racks allow a forklift to come in and move everything around. I used to work for a winery that we didn't put the barrels on racks, we put them on chocks. So you would build barrel pyramids. Doesn't work for 10,000 barrels. It's way too much work. So you put them on these racks, and then you have the most prized person in the world at a winery like this is a forklift driver. So we have the best forklift drivers in the world that can navigate our cave system. So okay, lots and lots of barrels. And here's an example of, what's king for Alexander Valley and for AVV. It's Cabernet. So this was the very first wines produced at the winery, and this is still our hallmark wine. You can see the gradual progression of our different labels. I've actually been here for all except for 2 of those. So, but we're on to our estate Cabernet. So if you haven't poured that into your glass, I'd encourage you to do that now. But like I said, Cabernet is king in the Alexander Valley. It's a wonderful growing region for that grape variety. You get very complex, age-worthy wines. The Alexander Valley is known to produce Cabernet that is easily consumable at a young age. So you don't have to lay it down for years and years and years before you can try it. It's very approachable. But once again, that acidity and that concentration allows it to age gracefully for decades. And the wine that you're trying tonight, it's 87% Cabernet. I've actually blended in a little bit of Merlot and Cab Franc, also a little Petit Verdot Malbec, some other Bordeaux varieties that we have on the property. It makes for a little bit more complexity, a little bit more interesting wine. You get this great cassis black cherry. There's a little chocolate that you can pick up in the Alexander Valley Cabernet. And then a nice soft and supple tannin structure and a nice firm acidity on the finish.
And I think it's always fun to taste the Cabernet next to the Merlot and talk about food pairings, because these are obviously 2 of our top selling wines and 2 of the wines that we're most proud of. And we all have our favorite food pairings. And I know Kevin, we used one of Kevin's favorite food pairings for our wine club recipe last year.
That's right. Yeah, I don't usually hand over any of my recipes. I get judged enough on my wines. I don't need to be judged on my food, but I handed over, I have this cowboy steak rub that I love to use. I think it pairs excellent with the estate Cabernet, brings out all the nuances of this wine, and who doesn't love a good steak with a cap?
And a lot of us like to say that the Cabernet is elegance in a glass. We're often compared to Napa Cabernets, which tend to be very young. When they're young, tend to be very brash, whereas Alexander Valley Cabernets tend to be very approachable, which makes them very food friendly as well. So we tend to pair the Cabernet with a lot of red meats, blue cheeses, hard cheeses. It actually is one of our top selling wine in Italian restaurants. Because it is so food friendly because of the balance, versus you compare it to the Merlot, Kevin.
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
And comparing the Cabernet to the Merlot with food pairings, I know some of my favorite food pairings with the Merlot tend to be lamb, tend to be duck, tend to be the fattier meats.
Absolutely. And also I do this one dish, it's actually a pasta dish. With eggplant, and the Merlot does great with that too. There's some with the roasted eggplant, I think it really brings out the flavors in the Merlot as well.
And from a cheese pairing in terms of the Cabernet, I know a lot of us love it with anything with blue cheese. And Kevin did mention, he sort of opened the door about being judged on his food or judged on his wines. You know, a lot of people like to look at points and reviews, and we certainly have lots of those at AVV. But one of the most fun judgings that we participate in over the years is a little thing called the Houston Rodeo. And when we leave Texas and outside of Texas, a lot of people laugh and say, oh, you're entering your wines in a rodeo competition. But Kevin and AVV are the only winery to have ever won the grand champion at that particular competition 4 times, which really kind of says something about the wines. And it's a competition of 2,800 to 3,600 wines that are judged double blind, triple blind. And it kind of shows how much people love the style of wine from the Alexander Valley and the style of wine that Kevin produced. And it's a lot of fun for us to win that competition. But what's even more fun is that particular competition, every year they auction off the winners and they raise money. And they have raised millions of dollars to support educational scholarships for kids in the Texas market. So while he doesn't like to be judged on his food, we sure do like him being judged on the wines that he produces.
Yeah, it's a fabulous event. It's great. I'm always amazed at how many people know of that event and participate in it. Here's a great example of we're always planting, it seems like, on the property. It's a very large piece of property. Vineyards don't last forever. So it gives us a chance to replant to maybe a different rootstock, maybe a different clone of a grape variety, different spacing, different trellis system. It's a chance to change something to improve and see what type of fruit we can get out from a different vineyard. So here's an example of us putting in a new Cabernet block.
I guess I'm going to interrupt real quick because we did have that somebody was from San Antonio and wanted to know if we entered the San Antonio Rodeo. And I can tell you again with a lot of pride, you are looking at the winemaker that produced the grand champion wine at the San Antonio Rodeo as well. We have a lot of fun in Texas. We tend to call Texas our second home. Texas loves California wines. They love Alexander Valley vineyards. And we sure do have a lot of fun at those rodeos.
And now we're back to trivia. Well, wine needs cheese, and it is important to be always prepared for any sort of cheese pairing with any sort of wine. And Alexander Valley Vineyards has provided us with the tools that we need. So I'll go on to the next trivia question. The next track question is, what 2 exterior features distinguished the MGA twin cam from its tamer kin? What 2 exterior features distinguished the MGA twin cam from its tamer kin? Now, the MGA twin cam was built in very small numbers. In fact, it was only just 2% of the total MGA production. Only 2,111 roadsters and coupe models were ever produced. The twin cam sported all-wheel disc brakes, just like the Jaguar. It had a Rexine covered dashboard and a different speedometer and tachometer, and also offered as an option an oil cooler and close ratio gearbox. It had a 114 mile an hour top speed with 108 horsepower. However, it also had its drawbacks. It had excessive oil consumption and the need for 100 octane fuel plus engine reliability issues plagued the earlier cars, and BMC chose to withdraw it from the market pretty early in its life. Mike, how are we doing?
Well, I'd say we got some decent answers. How specific we need to be here? We got badge and slotted wheels, wheels and logo, Dunlop knockoff wheels and twin cam logos on either side of the bonnet is probably the most correct. Higher
Okay.
credit card balances is pretty good. But yeah, it's a tough call because, you know, we got correct badge. Slotted wheels doesn't really do it for me because the thing that's most distinct about the twin cam is having those wheels that are knockoff disc wheels.
Mhm.
And so I'm gonna have to go with knockoff Dunlop wheels and twin cam logos. So
Okay.
Good choice, Mike.
Yep.
is
I
the
agree.
correct answer.
And you are the judge.
And that is Mike again, Mike Hughes. Is that Mike Hughes? It is Mike to everyone.
Yeah, that was me.
All right, Ringer.
Okay.
Might have to retire, Mike. But that is correct. I mean, they are very, very special wheels. You can knock them off like a regular knockoff wheel, but they're steel for the rigidity. And they're actually, as a point of interest, maybe to some, maybe it's just droning on to others, but the threads per inch on a knockoff are actually 9 threads per inch versus 12 threads per inch on a regular wire wheel.
You knew that?
So it is a little bit quicker to exchange a twin cam wheel than it is a wire wheel.
I just
Just wanted that quickness for racing. All right, I will cease droning and return to our regularly scheduled program.
And I might note also before I drop away that Mike is an owner of an MGA twin cam, and he's brought it. He has a barn restoration right now that he's working on.
Or maybe 2 or 3, but.
So while we're looking at the view of the vineyard, we've got a few questions, Kevin, one of which kind of impacts this view. And somebody asked about fires in California, and living on the East Coast, what I tend to use as the analogy is that California fires are just like hurricanes on the East Coast. We know there's always the possibility of that occurring. So we always plan and prepare for the worst and hope for the best. But I'll let Kevin go and add his as well.
Yes, that's you're absolutely. Can you hear me now? So fires have
Yes.
become part of the part of what we have to worry about now. So it seems like definitely more in the last few years, but yes, we just prepare, make sure that we have everything on site, and we make sure we have a plan. It's not something we like dealing with, obviously, but it's something you have to nowadays. I wanted to address a couple of questions I saw on there regarding planting of a vineyard. So almost all the plant material that we get, all the plants, we a nursery. There's quite a few nurseries in California that you can source your vines from, and you can order these vines, and they'll have a certain root stock. That's the part that goes in the ground. And then you'll have your scion, which is your clone or your grape variety that you want. So you can pick all different types of clones, and you can pick all different types of rootstocks in any combination that you want. Once you plant that, it's usually about 3 years before you get your first crop. You won't get much fruit at all that first year, but usually it's about three years before you'll get that. So it's a time commitment. a vineyard will produce, a healthy vineyard will, it'll kind of reach its maximum after around 25 years. Obviously, there's some great varieties out there. We have some old vine Zinfandel that have a block that's over 50 years old, and it's surrounded by, there's actually a block next to it that's 100 years old. So they're still producing at that old age, just not much fruit at all. So most vineyards are, I would say, they hit their prime in the 10 to 25-year-old range. And this is a picture we're out there, we're pruning the grapevines. We prune in two different styles. We either do cane pruning, which this is where you have the head of a vine and then the canes come out and the fruit will come off of those canes. Or you can do spur pruning that we also have for like some of our older Zinfandel, where you leave a spur and then the buds will come off of that spur.
Speaking of Zinfandel, we had another question talking about how you deal with the unevenness of the ripening of the Zinfandel. How do you choose when to harvest?
It's based on flavor, and so we'll take, when we're out there sampling to determine the optimum time to pick, that's one reason why I take an entire cluster instead of just pulling an individual berry off that cluster. You take that whole cluster and then you crush it up, and you can taste the juice, and you can see if it's where you want it to be flavor wise. So the more specific to that Zinfandel question, to compensate for some of that unripe berries that might be in the cluster, you tend to have some overripe berries. So you're looking for that happy medium between overripe, underripe.
And following along that category, we've got a question about, they're calling it the fingers on the glass. I think they're talking about the legs that you see on the glass when you swirl, how the Sinzin had great fingers and I call it legs, while the Cab had essentially none.
Yeah, a lot of that is dictated by alcohol content. So a little higher alcohol content in the Zinfandel compared to the Cabernet. So it changes the viscosity of the wine, and you'll get that. Some people really look for that. Some people don't care.
We tend, I can tell the group that it's not something at the winery, at least when we're tasting. I don't tend to look at the legs in the wine. Do you tend to look at them?
I don't. A lot of what I was taught in school was, I had a professor that showed me that you could take the glass and you put your hand over it and you swirl it, and that will change the vapor pressure above the wine, and you can actually, a wine that gives legs won't give legs. So for whatever that's worth.
Yeah. With additional questions, talk about bottling. If we bottle on site, and yes, we're an estate winery and we do everything on site pretty.
Correct. So the laws, if you label your wine as a estate grown and produced, that means that you grew the grapes, you made the wine on the property, the wine never left your property and was bottled on the property. So if you can do all that, then you can put estate grown and bottled on your label. This has been a commitment that the family has decided to make. It's always been very important that we're estate grown and bottled. So we do have our own bottling line. We do everything on site. We'll bottle now we're bottling just about 9 months out of the year. The only time we usually stop, if we can, is during harvest.
One of the things I haven't noticed you mentioned were tannins. The importance of tannins.
Sure. So tannins add, that is the structure that you're feeling on your mouth. They contribute to the structure, but then they also help with the ageability of the wine. So if you did not have tannins, the wine wouldn't hold up.
And we had a quick,
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
we had a question about our only, they said light wines. I'm not sure if they meant light or white, but actually you could go both ways with that one about chilling wines and serve the proper temperature to serve wines at.
Right. We've been doing, as you can imagine, with the pandemic, we've been doing quite a few of these Zoom meetings. And I was listening to Katie Wetzel Murphy, one of the owners, the other day, and she was talking about how she likes to actually serve Chardonnay or the Gewürztraminer that we produce at room temperature, not chilled down super cold, because you get more of the aromatics that way. And we tend to chill down white wines too much, and we tend to drink red wines maybe a little too warm. So I would actually suggest that on a red wine, put it in the refrigerator for 10 minutes before you're going to open it, just to give it just a little, a lot more of the fruit will come out that way. It won't be as harsh, and the alcohol won't show as much if you just give it a little chill. And then the reverse on that, take your white wine out of your cooler 15, 30 minutes before you're going to try it. I think it shows better.
We're kind
Could
of,
I ask a question? I'm sorry.
go ahead.
I was just wondering, we really like the Sinzin, and I've been just looking at how we can buy so the one we tasted is 2017, and almost everywhere I look locally, we're in Northern Virginia, says that it's not available. Where can we get that?
It is widely available in the DC market. It is available in Northern Virginia. The distributor is Select Wines, and I can email it to you. Or you can ask your favorite retailer, but it is definitely widely available in DC and Maryland. So I can shoot me an email and I can send you some places, but any of the retailers can get it because our distributors do stock it. Our wines are distributed nationally. You can also buy them online at abvwine.com if you can't find them. We are still currently selling the 2017 online.
I was gonna say, Penny, as long as they get it through you and use the code MG21, don't we get a food bank
That's
donation?
exactly right.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
I wasn't going to try to be a big salesman tonight, but that's exactly right. If you order it online through us through the end of the month and you put in that code MG21, or if you forget to put it in, call or email, we'll honor it. And we are matching, we're doing that 15% donation to the food bank.
Okay, great.
We also had a quick questions, Kevin. I see one that says talking about, do we supplement with other vineyard grapes or use their own? Talking about that grape to glass type of scenario for our estate wines and the relationships we have with some of our growers that grow some of our fruit.
Yes, so we definitely don't grow all of our own fruit. We have some really tremendous growers that we work with, but it's part of that estate grown and bottled that I talked about. You're allowed to have outside fruit as long as you control the vineyard. So we dictate how the fruit is grown. We dictate how they do everything in the vineyard. It's basically leasing the property. They own it and they grow wonderful fruit, but we get to tell them how to do it. And by having that in a contract, it still allows us to bottle it as a state.
And I've had a question about the addition of sulfites. And, that's something so many wineries or so many wines that are produced today that perhaps aren't estate have all sorts of things added into them to get flavor profiles. And can you talk on sulfites and why we have sulfites in wines?
Sure. So sulfites have been used forever in wines, act as a preservative. That's about the only thing we add to the wines. We add yeast, but no other fining agents. Everything is very natural, but sulfur is definitely added as a preservative.
And we've got a quick question about breathing time, opening a wine, allowing it to breathe, and how that, from my standpoint, how that changes your flavor profile a little bit.
Changes a lot. So if you have the time and the ability, open up your wines 30 minutes before you're gonna try them. We make one wine, a Bordeaux variety, a Bordeaux blend called Cyrus. It's a fabulous wine, but it benefits from that wine. Open up 45 minutes ahead of time. It's amazing how it changes. It really comes through. It blooms. It comes together. If you have the ability, open the wine while you're making dinner. Open it before you start, and you'll be rewarded when it's dinner time.
Of course, I've had a complaint here that we have defective bottles because they got empty far too quickly. And I think that
I saw that. It came across. I was like, oh no, what happened?
But on the serious side, we had somebody ask if you could talk about how we clarify or fine the wines, how we filter.
So I do not add any fining agents to my wine. So what we do with all that barrel aging is over time, the sediment settles out to the bottom of the barrel, and then we'll rack the clear wine off of the sediment. We do that around 3 or 4 times in the life of the wine. And by doing that and doing careful rackings, you come away with a really clean wine, and you don't have to add any type of fining agent to it. We do, right before it goes to bottle, it runs through a coarse filter. It's called a bug catcher. Just enough to remove anything that maybe you don't want in there, but it doesn't remove. You can do some very fine filtering nowadays to where it can remove quite a bit, and we don't do any of that.
I think I'm going to switch us to the next slide just in case we have another trivia, but then we do have some more questions that I'll come back to. So if everybody has a question, throw it in the chat box. We'll come back and just another photo of our Cabernet again. So this is in honor of Ruth Armstrong's traveling MG happy hours.
Okay, so some beautiful plastic lightweight mugs, and these will be fine for traveling, as Penny said. The question is, what British marque developed the Buick designed small block V8 engine for inclusion in the MGB?
Wow.
Once again, what British marque developed the Buick designed small block V8 engine for inclusion in the MGB?
Wow. We've got immediate response to that, and Rover, Chris Lutz is correct. The Rover
Okay.
V8 was correct, and I'm just upset that I wasn't able to win these traveling wine glasses. So sad for me.
Well, for everyone else's information, the 3.5 liter V8 was one of the few fortunate results of the merger with British Leyland. It turned out to be a surprisingly easy fit in an MGB. The factory produced MGB GT V8 arrived in the summer of 1973 and sported a top speed of 125 miles per hour. And it also arrived just about the same time that the 1973 oil crisis came along. And essentially that caused British Leyland to decide not to ship the V8 models to the US. So the vehicle only lasted 3 years, and only 2,600 were ever sold in the UK.
Fantastic machines. As a side note, my brother had one. We imported from the UK, a chrome bumper model, and it was a pleasure to drive. If you've ever had a chance to drive a MG BGT V8 or even MG V8 that's been modified, it's a lot of fun. So I encourage you to pursue that if that is your desire, to go a little bit faster and you can't kind of stroke the amount that our good friends at Frontline want for one of their lovely high horsepower models. But anyway, great fun. I would love to know what happened to that car. I know a former board member bought it, but I thought it ended up in Maryland somewhere. But if anybody knows the whereabouts of the white MG BGT V8 that my brother had, I would love to know. Anyway, without further ado, back to our regularly scheduled program.
So I just thought, well, I'd keep showing some photos, vineyard photos, while we answered some of the questions. So one of the questions we had comes back to the barrel aging and how long does wine stay in the barrel? And obviously that is a loaded question because it depends on the wine.
It depends on exactly, it depends on the wine. So for example, the Zinfandel that you have, that was in barrel for around 10 months. The Merlot is usually around 12 to 14 months. Cabernet will be around 14. And then Cyrus, the Bordeaux blend I was talking about, that spends at least 2 years in the barrel.
And you might just give them an idea of how many different styles and types of barrels you might order in a year and how many different barrels. It's like the spice rack for the cook, your barrels are.
It is absolutely the spice rack. So I purchase from, the number changes all the time, but right now I think it's around 17 different Coopers, barrel manufacturers. And within that, you can get all different types of wood. So it's not just French oak, it's French oak from this forest. It's not only American oak, it's trees that were growing in Missouri or Minnesota or Pennsylvania. And each one of all this has a different flavor. So it's definitely like a spice rack. And then that's just the source of wood. And then it's how is the barrel made? Each Cooper you get different flavors based on how they made that barrel.
Feeling up to it? Yeah. All right.
If we had a quick.
And you can see this gentleman. Go ahead, Penny.
We had a quick question about the punts on the bottom of the bottles, which obviously anybody that pours wine for a living in a restaurant uses that punt to hold the bottle. But their question was about the punt and why it's in the wine bottle.
So the punt, what I've always been taught was that it adds structural stability to the wine bottle. So if it's a wine that's going to be consumed early, like I worked years in Germany, and German bottles, there is no punt. So you're going to consume those wines young. They're white wines. They're not necessarily, they can age beautifully, but they're not necessarily meant to age. But for a red wine that's going to be in the bottle for quite a few years, and you want that bottle to hold up be a little stronger, you put a punt in. So it adds surface area and helps with this durability of the glass. And here's one of the things I was talking about, how you can get different grape variety, different vines with different clones. So this is one of my favorite Cabernet vineyards that we have on the property. It was planted in 1996 and it has clone 337. And 337 has always been one of my favorite clones. It gives great fruit and really dark inky color. So a little bit of this goes a long way. But it just, we have so many different clones here. It's just one more thing that makes it unique.
And much like the MG midget, it is a very, very correct.
Varied.
Back to trivia. Okay, we've got, this is our last, we have two of these, and it's our last prize for the night. It's our vintage Quaker State gas pumps. And as you can note on the box, it's suitable for ages 8 to 108. So it should cover most of the folks in the club. And so I'm going to go ahead and ask the question. And this is, I think this is a reasonably hard question, but it should be able to be answered by some of us. British Leyland decided to recognize 1975 as the year to celebrate the MG's 50th anniversary and produced 750 of what vehicle for the home market? British Leyland decided to recognize 1975 as the year to celebrate the MG's 50th anniversary and produce 750 of what vehicle for the home market? This vehicle was supposed to mark 50 years of MG cars, but in reality, it really marked 50 years of the time, from the time MG produced old #1 car, and which was probably the first real MG sports car. And this was a particularly attractive model.
And we
Mike,
have one in the club, and we have a winner. So the real winner is Isabel, and it's the Jubilee.
right. It was the 1975 MGB GT Jubilee. It was a right-hand drive model with a gold tape stripe for its racing green paint. It had VA style wheels, which were partly painted gold, and they were built between April and June of 1975. And actually, the club had the pleasure to see one, which is owned by our club members, Mary Claire and Thomas Salander. So big shout out to them. And they shared their extremely rare model with us for a Saturday. And they originally obtained that car with less than 300 miles on it.
And as we have two of these, the second winner, the first winner is Isabel, the second winner is Thomas and Mary Claire.
That's very befitting.
So back to our questions, and perhaps I misunderstood one. Someone asked the question that I assume was the punt in the bottle, and they're saying not the punt, but the bumps. So I'm not sure if whoever asked it, if you want to jump in and explain what you're asking.
Yeah, my question was on the side of the bottles. It's not the bottom, the ridges, but on the side edge of the bottle, there's some bumps that almost look like braille.
It's my understanding from the glass manufacturer that those bumps, so the glass bottles are made in obviously it's molten glass when it goes into the mold, and there's different parts of it. So you have the base that is actually poured, and then you have the sides that come together that are poured. And I believe what they told me was that the bumps help with removing the glass from the mold, that if it was just all smooth without any indentations, they have a hard time, it suctions to the mold. But by having these bumps, it helps with removing it.
So one of our favorite views at the winery is high on the side. Now, a lot of people wonder how we came up with the name Alexander Valley Vineyards, and it was because this particular piece of property was settled in the mid-1800s by Cyrus Alexander. He received about 9,000 acres for exploring Northern California, and he chose this spot to settle, to build his home, and to raise his family. And in 1962, the Wetzel family did the same. So it's a pretty special spot for us. And hopefully this little view of the wines brings a little bit of our home to yours. It's a place that we are all very proud of. And it's a place that we think just produces fabulous produce and wonderful wines. And this is, again, when you hike across the property, it's one of our favorite views.
Well, Penny, this is Joe Dowley again. We've reached the witching hour of 7:30. And if we've got a bunch of questions to still be answered, we can do that. But otherwise, I want to thank everybody for participating again tonight. I hope everybody had a good time. Zoom has got its own challenges, but when you add a little wine, all those challenges seem to go away. And I think we, for ourselves here in McLean, have enjoyed ourselves tremendously, learned a lot. And Kevin, thank you so much. This has been just an outstanding opportunity to figure out how you do what you do. And I do want to say that the beat goes on. Because of ABB's generosity, we can order wines now, having tasted these little bottles. We can get the bigger bottles, and I don't know if you guys do magnums or not, but maybe we could get those. Anyway, to the extent anyone orders any wine from now until the end of March using our MG21 code, the contribution of 15% of that transaction will go to, for the product, will go to the Capital Area Food Bank. And after all, that's the premise of tonight's event, besides just having great fun and being with each other. So again, I want to just thank everybody, especially Penny. Penny, you were just great to work with and a fantastic organizer for this whole event, and unflaggingly happy to do it. And I just salute you, and I salute the whole family at the Vineyard and Kevin and everybody for being willing to do this with us. We've enjoyed it just a whole lot. And with that, I think we'll probably just say goodbye and say goodnight. And thank you once again to everybody for joining in.
Thank you
Good
so
night,
much, Kevin.
everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
Penny.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Great fun. Thanks all. And thanks for all the winners. And you'll get your prizes in the mail.
Down there, see who sounds to.